Open the pod bay doors, Hal.
I'm sorry, Dave. I'm afraid I can't do that.
We assume that's the Bahamas. 544 miles per hour, 46, 56 degrees.
So I am just curious, how many of you heard about the potentiality that I had contacted Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson? Because flat out I did. Just hoping, is The Rock in the house? Good, because we were going to have to start out with a cage match. And I watched this movie in preparation for this. I would not do well in a cage match. However, how many of you actually showed up today just because you thought there was an offside chance that you might see The Rock in here? Well, on behalf of all the folks that are benefiting from this Science on Screen project, and that includes myself through the Geology lecture series at SWOCC, the SWOCC Foundation, the Health Science Building Project, North Bend High School, their science department, Marshfield Science Department, also the North Bend Music Department, also the Marine Science Center out at Charleston, and South SLU. We're very indebted to the Sloan Foundation, and also the Coolidge Corner. You can see I have that memorized really well. The Coolidge Corner Theater Foundation. Between them and the Alfred P. Sloan Foundation are supporting Science on Screen, and we're doing it a little bit different. Instead of bringing in one super high-end speaker, we're taking local folks and connecting them so that the grant funds are going to be able to go and support our high school science departments and all of the other things that I listed. Thank you for that. So I will be auctioning off a date with The Rock, and so, you know, if you want, we can go there. So one of the aspects of Science on Screen is actually to look at a little bit of science that might be related to some of these movies. So I titled mine elegantly, The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly. Some of you actually might get that connection. The science behind the movie San Andreas and how it relates to our backyard. I'm going to do more on the San Andreas piece, and then a little Q&A for anybody that's interested afterwards. We can address a little bit of that more local stuff. So the movie San Andreas, Hollywood and science are just fantastic. And so I sat through this movie once, and I tried to figure out what actually works scientifically. There you go. There actually is a fault named San Andreas. And the second one I think is a little bit on edge, but you know, Dwayne Johnson's nickname is The Rock, and most of us know geology, rocks, minerals, they go together. Okay, now we can go to the movie. Yeah. Except that's not what Science on Screen says, so we'll go into this a little bit more detail. So there's actually a couple other things as well, and I think there are a couple things that you can get out of downtown Coos Bay even. Masonry buildings, bad. Drop, cover, and hold on is still good. Now, most of us don't think that, and things have changed, but that actually is a very valid response to big earthquakes. And it's something that you probably want to do, especially if you're running out onto streets with masonry buildings, because masonry building, bad. So the other thing, and you know, this is one that goes back and forth too. I would panic, and then I would calm down. But in catastrophic situations, I think that a lot of the folks that have done some of the social studies on this actually suggest that people don't panic quite as bad as we expect, and then they help more. And I guess for me in Cascadia, I hope that that ends up being the case, especially once everything happens, we kind of relax and help more. I think those are the two keys, awareness and preparedness. I've lived on the South Coast for about 21 years now, so relatively speaking, I'm new to the neighborhood, and I understand that and can live with it. But one of the things about this is when I moved here, we didn't have that awareness piece. So most of the individuals didn't know that we could have a magnitude 8, 8.5, 9 or greater earthquake in the neighborhood. How many of you know that? Fantastic. I hope I've played just a tiny little role, because in the last 12 years, I've been hosting a geology lecture series talk somewhere around January 26th. My parents think it's because it's their anniversary and I like to get 400 people together, which honestly, I know they are hearing this, just go la la la, mom and dad. But one of the benefits there is that it's a really nice anniversary gift, and it's pretty easy too. The preparedness piece. So 21 years ago, not that many people recognized that we had great earthquakes in the neighborhood. Now I think we do, and we're starting to turn that corner to preparedness. How many of you have a to-go bag? Fantastic. If I had asked that 15 years ago, there might be one hand up. If you don't have one, find out what it is, and you might want to get one. But that preparedness plan. So plate tectonics. For science, this is new. It's only been around since the 1960s. Its predecessor's been around for 100 years. But one of the things that's wonderful for us, notice all of this, that's us. So it's really nice out here where plate boundaries are, because plates move, you get faults, and you have activity. Well, if it's out here, how many people live there? None. This is what's going on with plates. How many of you know the 3-plate boundaries? Shaylin, tell me one. Not to put you on the spot. Yeah, because you can probably read too. So, somebody else, tell me another one. Okay, say that one more time. Convergent, awesome. And transform going here. So transform, side to side. Divergent going apart, convergent going together. Any idea which one San Andreas is? It's not apart. It's a slide past, transform. Any idea which one is in our backyard, just a few tens of miles off the coast? Hint, trick question. Whoops. Sensitivity. So this is one of the cool things about living in the Oregon coast, is that we actually have all 3 plate tectonic boundaries in our neighborhood. So, you know, California thinks they're all that because they have San Andreas. Well, yeah, they have San Andreas, they have a movie. Apparently, talking to Friday's speaker, we may be the next movie in this sequence. I really don't want to know that, but sequel. But San Andreas, you know, they've got this one transform boundary, strike-slip faults down there. Well, we have all 3. So we've got this divergent spreading center just a little ways offshore. We've got transform boundaries that have been kicking off little faults of 3, 4, 5 magnitude. And we've got the one with teeth. Teeth, bad. How many of you were here for the first Science on Screen showing of Jaws? Very good. Well, you know from that movie, teeth, bad. Big earthquakes, bad. Well, that's your San Andreas. Looks like a big knife through butter. And it's not great, but there are some things about it. How many of you know about tsunamis? If I say nothing else, if you are out at Horsefall or down at Bastendorf and the water disappears, run. I won't tell you exactly what I normally say, but run very fast. It would be good for you. 400 meters equals about how many Super Bowl fields? Fortunately, that's not today. 400 meters? About 4 football fields. Actually, more, but that's close enough. 400 meters of water going away. This is the 2004 Boxing Day earthquake and tsunami in Sumatra. When that happens, bad. Waves, not good. 15 meters, ballpark, 50 feet. There's your wave heights from Tohoku. Many of you probably remember this, the Japanese quake of 2011. It actually affected our neighborhood too, just on a very modest sense. 50 feet, keep that in mind. These are some of the wave heights from the Indian Ocean event in 2004. 9 meters, ballpark. Say 30 feet, give or take a little bit. 30 feet, 50 feet. Golden Gate Bridge, 220 feet. No. Just no. Giant wave, you know, some of you may know that, locally used, but a classic Japanese woodcut print. That may be where we get a lot of our images of thinking of tsunami waves. This one is probably plotted even beyond San Andreas, but yeah. And this is the predecessor. This is what The Rock actually was using as a template for one of the scenes that will be coming up. Buildings. Realistic? No. Damage? Sure. There's a scene with AT&T Park. How many of you are San Francisco fans? Good. I'm a Mets fan. Maybe I shouldn't say that, but I am. I was not watching the 1989 World Series. Then I found out there was an earthquake, and I started flipping around channels. I looked at news. I found out who's your best earthquake play-by-play man? Al Michaels. So you thought that he just did sports. This, masonry, bad. So this is from actual earthquake, involved Candlestick Park, the old park, and masonry outside of it in San Francisco. Masonry, still bad, but apparently clean bad. Okay, that's better. But still, all these, are these new buildings or old buildings? You can tell. New buildings. Building codes, we have them, they've changed. Unlikely. Yeah, that's still good. I'll let you put your own caption on there, I'm not going to do it. Oh no, bad, but it's not going to happen. No, unrealistic, it just doesn't go that way. Once you have that big giant crack, it won't move. No friction, no earthquake. However, they do break. And if I was a betting man, I would bet you that you couldn't break that along that line a second time. But that's from 2011 in Tohoku. Now, break out your glasses if you're like me. Don't worry about any of this stuff other than lots, few. So there's over 1 million earthquakes a year. How many of them are actually damaging? Well, that all depends. Location, 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 so we won't go there. But here's the magnitude 8 or greater. And earthquake magnitude, how many of you have heard of the Richter scale? So Richter scale actually isn't what we use anymore, but it's basically the same kind of number system. It's called moment magnitude. It's, for all intents and purposes, very similar. So San Andreas, the movie, largest quake, magnitude 9.6. Well, here's the real San Andreas numbers. 7.9, 7.8, 6.9. Okay, I lied. That one's actually not San Andreas, but it's down there. So 7.9, small, right? Yeah, not really. Even that Loma Prieta at 6.9, pretty serious. So San Andreas is 800 miles long, and if the entire thing busted, we would be talking magnitude 8.3. Drop down to Chile, 1960, I remember as if it was yesterday, 1,000 miles long, 150 miles wide, and it's just like our Cascadia in the backyard. 9.5, the greatest earthquake to be recorded to date, which isn't the 9.6 from the movie. 9.2, Good Friday earthquake. 9.1 and 9, 8.8, those are some recent quakes as well. And actually, I'll tell you one thing about all of these. They're all like us. Plates come together, one's diving under. That's what generates the big toothy quake. And just if you wondered about energy, there's that Chile one, bigger than all of this stuff. That exponential curve, that's why we don't want to know about exponents sometimes, but we need to. So San Andreas, to go back to the beginning, transform boundary, horizontal movement. And that makes shallow quakes that tend to be relatively small. The magnitude 9 and greater quakes, those were all convergent plates coming together, and that's where you make the big events. And that's where, when they release, you can actually displace the water column and generate a tsunami. Up here, you don't displace the water column, even if it's underwater, you don't create a giant tsunami. Heck, no tsunami period. We won't worry about that. It's pretty pictures, it's what the subduction zone looks like, and it's exactly like those other 3 places that make big earthquakes. Anybody buy gumdrops today? Because you all have figured out, because you are all eating the best popcorn in the country, the concession stand is still open, so feel free to help yourself. Whoops, dang it. This is actually monitoring us. We've got one at SWOCC. They're watching us move. If you want to watch paint dry, go down to Cape Blanco. That surface is going up 1 inch every 3 years. That's crazy fast. So, do you notice by us lots of little dots for earthquakes? No. Do you notice where it says 1700? That's why we're doing this weekend, because January 26, 1700 at 9 p.m. was the last Great Quake. And so we've had lots of little things on Cascadia since then, on the outer edges, but not along that subduction zone. So this is the one we're waiting on. And this guy figured out, along with his crew, Brian Atwater, that event actually took place at 9 o'clock on a specific day in January in 1700. And this is our connection to it. That pile of gray is actually a tsunami sand uncovered down at South Slough. If you Google Orphan Tsunami or Atwater, you can check out this publication. It's available free online. You can find out all kinds of crazy information about that 1700 event. Band and Marsh, those trees died January 26, 1700 at 9 p.m. Those trees, how many of you seen those out at Sunset Bay? Those died in about 1,200 years ago. So a lot of folks think that that's from the 1700 event, predates it. Oral histories, such as the local oral history about Face Rock. You go down to Crescent City, there's a number of oral histories. You go farther north along the coast. There are a lot of oral histories that relate to Cascadia that we can tie into, at least for scale, and get a sense of time. If you want to find more, you can track IRIS, you can track USGS, you can track our state geology department called Dogami. If you Google any of those, you can find out a lot more about earthquakes in our neighborhood and globally. And there we are. So the good news is there's a whole bunch of quakes that are little. The bad news is there's the potential for a really big one. And so there's a probability currently estimated of a magnitude 8 or greater earthquake in our neighborhood on the south part of Cascadia that would be 37% probability in the next 50 years. The bonus is there's a 63% probability that if I live to be 100, it won't happen in my lifetime. Look at the left-hand side. How many quakes? I told you about that one, Chile, Alaska, Sumatra. That's 100 years of energy released by earthquakes. Almost half of it, just 3 big ones. But that goes along with it, that when you look at big quakes, the really huge ones are kind of a rare event. And without those rare events, you know, we don't get stuff like that. So if we didn't have an occasional earthquake, if you enjoy shore acres and the waves breaking up over that, you wouldn't have it. So after the movie, we will have a little Q&A. After the movie, hopefully Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson won't show up, because I suppose I would still have to do the cage match thing with him. And that would just result in blood and me not being able to teach for probably a month or 2. I appreciate all of you showing up for Science on the Screen. Enjoy the movie.